People read it, Raina said. They wrote down what it contained. About as reliable as the New Testament then, the man said. Raina shrugged. It's what I have. What if I said you could have the real thing? The third seedling shot up, colliding with the ceiling, and when it fell, it dug into the grains of the floor. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. It doesn't exist, Raina said, clearing her throat. You just said so. No, I specifically said it was long lost, the man said. Not everyone gets to see it. Raina felt her mouth tighten. It was a strange bribe, but she'd been offered things before. Everything came with a price. So what would I have to do then, she asked, irritated. Promise you 8 years of harvest in exchange? Make up a percentage of your annual profits? No, thank you. She turned, and something cracked beneath her feet. Little green roots sprouted from the floor and crept out like tendrils, like tentacles, reaching for her ankles and tapping at the base of her shoes. How about, the man posed neutrally, in exchange for 3 answers? Raina turned sharply, and the man didn't hesitate. Clearly he'd had some practice leveraging people before. What makes it happen? He asked. His first question, and certainly not the one Raina would have gone with if she'd been the one given the choice. I don't know, he arched a brow, waiting, and she said, fine. It uses me, uses my energy, my thoughts, my emotions. If there's more energy to give, then it takes more of it. Most of the time I'm restraining it, but if I let my mind go, what happens to you in those moments? No, wait, let me clarify, he amended, apparently sticking to his promise of 3 answers. Does it drain you? She set her jaw. It gives a little back sometimes, but normally yes. I see. Last question, he said. What happens if you try to use it? I told you, she said. I don't use it. He sat back, gesturing to the 2 seedlings still remaining on the table, one half-heartedly growing roots while the other lay split open and bare. The implication there was clear. Try and see. She weighed the outcomes, running the calculations. Who are you? Raina asked, paying her attention from the seedling. Atlas Blakely, caretaker, replied the man. And what is it you care for? Sorry, I'd be happy to tell you, he said, but the truth is it's a bit exclusive. I can't technically invite you yet, as you're still tied for 6th on our list. She frowned. What does that mean? It means only 6 can be invited, Atlas said plainly. Your professors at the Osaka Institute seem to think you will refuse my offer, which means your spot is somewhat... He trailed off. Well, I'll be frank. It's not unanimous, Miss Mori. I have exactly 20 minutes to convince the rest of my council that you should be our 6th choice. Who says I want to be chosen? He shrugged. Maybe you don't, he permitted. If that's the case, I will alert the other candidates the slot is theirs. A traveler, he clarified. A young man, very intelligent, well-trained, perhaps better trained than you. A pause to let that sink in. It's a very rare gift he possesses, Atlas conceded, but he has, in my view, a considerably less useful ability than yours. She said nothing. The plant, which had curled around her ankle, gave a malcontented sigh, wilting slightly at her apprehension. Very well, Atlas said, rising to his feet, and Raina flinched. What? She swallowed. Show me the manuscript. Atlas arched a brow. He said 3 answers were all I had to give, Raina reminded him, and the corners of his mouth quirked up, approving. So I did, didn't I? He waved a hand, producing a hand-woven book, and levitated it to the air between them. The cover slid open carefully, revealing contents of tiny scrawled handwriting that appeared to be a mix of ancient Greek and pseudo-hieroglyphic runes. What spell were you reading? He asked, as she reached for it, hand already half extended. Apologies, Atlas said, waving the book back from her a few inches. I can't let you touch it. It already shouldn't be out of the archives, but again, I'm hoping you will prove my efforts worthwhile. What spell were you reading? The cloaking spell. Raina stared at the pages, only understanding about half of it. Osaka's program for rune reading had been somewhat elementary. Tokyo's would have been better, but again, it had come with strings, the one she used to master appearance of the island. Atlas nodded, the pages turning of their own accord, and there on the page was a crude drawing of Aya, part of the writing stripped away from age. It was a crude, unfinished illusion spell, which was something Raina had not been able to study at all beyond basic mediums theory. Illusion courses at the Osaka Institute were for illusionists, which she was not. Oh, she said. Atlas smiled. 15 minutes, he reminded her, and then he vanished the book. So this too came with strings. That was obvious. Raina had never liked this sort of persuasion. But there was a logical piece of her that understood people would never stop asking. She was a well of power of vault with a heavy door, and people would either find ways to break in, or she would have to simply open them on occasion, only for a worthy purchaser. She closed her eyes. Can we? Asked the seeds in their little seed language, which felt mostly like tiny pricks against their skin, like children's voices. Please, 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 Mother, may we? She sighed. Grow, she told them in their language. She had never known what it felt like to them, but it seemed they understood her well enough. Have what you need from me, and she added grumpily, just do it. The relief was a slither from inside her bones. Yes. When she opened her eyes, the seedlings on the ground had blossomed into a thin series of branches stretching from her feet up to the ceiling and then sprawling over it, spreading across it like a rash. The one embedded in the table had cracked the wood in half, sprouting upwards from it like moss over a barren tree trunk. The last, the one broken, quivered and burst in a ripe stretch of color, taking the form of vines, which then proceeded to bear fruit, each one ripening at an astronomical rate, while they watched. When the apples were round and heavy and temptingly ready to be plucked, Raina exhaled, releasing the ache in her shoulders, and glanced expectantly at her visitor. Ah, Atlas said, shifting in his seat. The plants had left little room for him to sit comfortably, and he no longer had space left for his legs. So it's both a gift and a talent, then. Raina knew her own worth well enough not to comment. What other books do you have? I haven't extended an offer yet, Miss Mori, Atlas replied. You'll want me, she said, lifting her chin. Nobody can do what I can do. True, but you don't know the other candidates on the list, she pointed out. We have two of the finest physicists the world has seen for generations, a uniquely gifted illusionist, a telepath, the likes of which are incomparable, an empath capable of luring a crowd of thousands. It doesn't matter who else you have, Raina set her jaw. You'll still want me. Atlas considered her a moment. Yes, he said. Yes, that's quite true, isn't it? Ha ha ha, laughed the plant. Ha ha, Mother wins, we win. Stop it, Raina whispered to the branches that had swept down to brush the top of her head with approval, and Atlas rose to his feet with a chuckle, extending a hand which contained a single slip of cardstock. Take this, he said, and in about 4 hours you'll be transported for orientation. For what? Raina asked, and he shrugged. Better I not have to repeat myself, he replied. Best of luck to you, Raina Mori. This will not be your final test. Then he was gone, and Raina scowled. The last thing she needed was a cafe full of plants, and now his office sat forgotten on the counter, already going cold. Coffee.